Hello and welcome back. Introduction to Art, chapter 4, Describing Art. Here we go. In this chapter, the learning objectives are to employ a vocabulary of art-specific terms and critical approaches to conduct a formal analysis of works of art. And we'll get into this, of course. Identify different types of art based on the degree of representation or non-representation that work of art displays. Distinguish between variations of representational qualities within a work of art, and identify characteristics that relate an individual or group of works of art to a cultural style, stylistic movement, or period, or an individual artist's style. So, according to our textbook, formal or critical analysis is an examination of the elements and principles of design present in an artwork and the process of deriving meaning from how those elements and principles are used by visual artists to communicate a concept, idea, or emotion. And I should also add, we'll get into this more, there's also a process of evaluation that this quote doesn't touch on as clearly as it might. So the four aspects of formal or critical analysis are observation and description, analysis, interpretation, and finally judgment or evaluation, the latter being an interpretation, or I should say an evaluation of the quality of the work of art. So observation and description, that's basically a discussion of the elements of design, like line, color, shape, that kind of thing. And then the analysis is of how the principles of design are employed. For instance, unity and variety, balance, that kind of thing. And interpretation is that has to do with what does the work of art mean? And then the judgment or evaluation, the final part, is what is its value, especially over time, and also its value to you, and how has your own personal evaluation changed as you've gotten to know this particular work of art? Now, our textbook has some in-depth examples of both this work of art, JMW's Turner Snowstorm, Steamboat Off a Harbor's Mouth, and Mary Cassatt's Lady at the Tea Table. And I would read those because those are very nice examples of the formal or critical analysis. Okay, and back to the Turner painting here. In the middle, we have the steamboat. That's the dark shape, basically. And I just wanted you to point out the peculiarity of the viewer's position. We seem to be on another vessel and tilting, listing in the heavy seas, and I just thought that was worth noticing. That it's an odd viewpoint for a painting from the this is probably about 1850, 1870 or so. A very strange viewpoint. And I mean, one of the thoughts I have is just think how this affects the viewer's sort of experience of the work of art. Here I am on the water, not on the land looking out toward the water, but on the water apparently, with my boat heeling or listing, right? Quite interesting. And then Mary Cassatt's painting, the interpretation of this is quite good because of the way it delves into the role of women in 19th century culture. Okay, art appears in a variety of ways in the Western world, well, actually in the entire world, but this class focuses not so much exclusively on Western art, but primarily we could call it a Western interpretation of works of art. So the following terms are used to help us describe what a work of art actually looks like. We have representational, abstract, and non-representational or non-objective. So Saturn Devouring His Children here by Goya, about 1807 or so, I'd say. Now, this is representational because you can see the crazy old god Saturn devouring this child, or it looks like a sort of full-grown human form that he's eating. So this is representational in that it's recognizable. We can see what it is, but bear in mind how odd this is. This isn't something we would hopefully see in real life. I mean, it is a fantastic image, a fantasy image. So representational art resembles forms found in the natural world, and the result is a recognizable likeness of objects and form, like this. I mean, we can recognize the old man and the body of the child, right? So we do see these forms in the world, but these are assembled or combined in a very disturbing way. So a couple of interesting terms here. Trompe-l'oeil, it's French for fool the eye, and I've mentioned this before. I have an example coming up. And the naturalistic, that means artwork that is faithful to visual experience. So there's some ways of saying that this is somewhat naturalistic in its execution, the way the artist painted it, but not naturalistic in its faithfulness to our typical experience in the world. So here's an example of a naturalistic painting, and bonus points if you can identify this artist. This is none other than the world famous Pablo Picasso, a very early work that he did as a young man of a girl taking her first communion. But you'll notice how easily understood the elements are. The girl kneeling, the altar boy, the man to the girl's left side, presumably her father, right? It's an easily read and presumably easily understood composition, as long as you were aware, say, of the Christian meaning of the painting. And then here's an interesting example of a three-dimensional version of trompe-l'oeil, fool the eye. This is not a painter with roller. This is a cast resin man standing on a drop cloth. And, you know, the concept behind this is that one would walk into the studio or the gallery space and do a kind of double take when you saw the figure of the man standing there. Abstract art distorts, exaggerates, or simplifies the natural world to provide essence or universality. Our textbook quite aptly points out that every kind of art, to some extent, is abstract because it is a reinterpretation of something in the world or someone's mind. So abstract, we'll talk about more specific examples of abstraction, and our book has some examples of, you know, a kind of a sequence of how an artist would abstract an actual object in the real world into one that is more sort of stylized, right? And oh, speaking of the word stylized, I need to be a little careful of my use of words here. Style or stylized or stylization refers to artwork that often to artwork that conforms to a preset style or convention for depicting the world. But this varies from culture to culture. So we've got to be a little careful of the meaning of a word like stylized, and of course, the meaning of a word like abstract. So here is a somewhat abstracted painting, also by Pablo Picasso, of a woman with one bare breast holding a fan. It's relatively easy to see what the image is a picture of, but this is what you might call semi-abstraction. And this more, quite a bit more abstract. I think the title is Woman with a Handbag, and it from by Louise Bourgeois. And you can see the black shape is supposed to be the handbag, right? But it's obviously, I mean, at least to me, meant to be a playful interpretation of a female form. Non-representational art contains no reference to the natural world as we see it. This art is also referred to as non-objective. Um, again, in the most extreme case, you could say that non-representational art contains no reference to the natural world, but that's kind of a difficult case to make. But think of the implications of this. So, and also think of a kind of continuum from representational art through abstract art to non-representational and non-objective art. It represents a kind of spectrum. And here is Vasily Kandinsky's painting, a good example of non-objective or non-representational. He was interested in the idea that colors and certain shapes could directly convey emotion without needing to tell a story. So non-objective art often attempts to do that, to convey meaning, convey ideas without specific references to the natural world. It's not that it's completely divorced from the natural world. It's just pretty far from it, as you can see. And my apologies, the set of colors on the very bottom, near the very bottom, that's some sort of printer's reference. That's not part of the painting. Style refers to characteristics recognized as constant, recurring or coherent. Again, think back to stylized, stylization, a difficult word to use consistently because there are so many meanings, but we can call certain aspects of art, or we can say that certain works of art conform to particular styles. So this Egyptian art is not just an example of a style or stylization. The image is also idealized, and our book goes into some quite good detail about what idealism in art would mean, how these forms are not just stylized to follow a certain convention, but this convention was supposed to convey an ideal sort of human form. Artistic styles tend to fall into three broad categories of period, regional, or formal. Our book has a lengthy discussion of styles, and there are also, there are personal artistic styles too. Period styles refer to the culture prevalent during a particular time, excuse me. So for instance, the Renaissance is a period style because it was widespread across many countries in Europe at a particular time. A regional style, a culture, this is a style prevalent in a particular culture in a particular place. And a formal style is not anchored in time or place. And this would include things like, according to our textbook at least, impressionism, realism, styles that are widely practiced across time. However, I would, as a warning, mention that a lot of these isms occur over a 2-century period. So in one sense, the isms correspond to a period style too. There is no cut and dry way of defining style, so don't worry about that. Just keep an open mind and look for certain consistency, a certain consistency in works of art, things that it shares with another work of art across time and place and culture. So Kitagawa Utamaro's hairdressing. This could be an example of a Japanese woodblock style. That would be in a particular time and place in this would be late 18th century Japan. This is also an example of Japanese art. You could say that's a style. And then the artist had his own particular style in this series of works of art. Degas' nude woman having her hair combed, another example. You'd probably call this Impressionism or maybe late Impressionism, but it bears distinct examples of Degas' own personal style, his way of mark making with pastel. It's an example of a formal style that would be Impressionism or late Impressionism. And you could also say, well, this is an example of 19th century French art or modern French art. So understanding art is a cultural skill, and it's something that we need to learn. A few things here. Art is always about something, even if that something is just visual pleasure or something purely aesthetic, like meaning, that purely aesthetic means it's just how the work of art looks. It's meant to convey a meaning purely through visual means, and it's not supposed to mean anything else, but that's still a kind of meaning, right? And then a couple of really important terms. Form is the way a work of art looks. That's just its visual appearance. The content is what the work art is about, or what its subject matter it is. So the theme of a work of art isn't necessarily what its subject matter is, but these are often closely aligned. Well, thanks for joining me for chapter 4. This is a long, very complicated chapter. It bears reading carefully, and I wish you the best of luck reading it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in chapter 5.